Hello, everybody from around the world, and welcome to the presentation of a new timepiece from Chronoswiss, the open gear ReSec Big Wave. And with us live from the Chronoswiss atelier in Lucerne, we have owner and director of Chronoswiss, Oliver Ebstein. Welcome. How are you today? Good. Thank you, Anders. Good seeing you. How are you doing? Very good, very good. And I am in Basel, as per usual. And for those of you who do not know me, I'm a watch journalist as of almost 20 years, working for magazines like Vanity Fair, South China Morning Post, Hodinkee. And I also have the privilege of working together with Chronoswiss for almost a year now and creating social media content and some other texts and photography. And for me, it's an exciting brand because you're able to really combine contemporary and classical in very concrete ways, both when it comes to watchmaking and design. And this is the first time that we're doing a digital presentation like this on various channels, so I hope we will not have any technical glitches. And tell me, Oliver, why are we doing this in this manner?
Well, I think Corona showed us that we have to evolve, and that's why we're here today. So as you say, happy to have so many people around the world watching. This really is touching, all digital, first time in this manner. I heard that there have been some glitches before, so bear with us. We're trying to do our best. I'm sitting here in front of let's say it's a kind of a spacecraft mixed with some DJ tables, so all new to us, and very excited to do so and go with you through the presentation of the new Big Wave.
Yes, and so we will talk about the watch and also what it means to be a modern mechanical watchmaker, and learn more about the strong optical effects of handmade guilloche patterns combined with modern materials, what a hybrid dial is, and also what will happen in the near future. And I must say, with all the people looking on the different channels, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please write it in the chat functions on the various channels and you will be answered. We will do our best to answer every single question. And yes, let's start with a little bit of a preview, I should say. If we please show the 3 photos that we've prepared. And Oliver, if you just shortly tell us, what are we looking at here?
Well, the presentation today is about the Big Wave, the blue retrograde second open gear watch. We see it here from the front, and with the nice blue rotor from the back. You see the Chronoswiss design aspects as the onion crown, the lux. We'll go more in detail afterwards. The finish, the satin finish on the side. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, and let's start with the meaning of the ReSec collection, which has been around for 2 years now and going through an evolution.
Well, retrograde complication goes back about 300 years, 1700th century. At that time, normally on pocket watches, showing a retrograde hour or half day, day. Today we have it on a retrograde second. For those who know us, we always had retrograde watches in our collection. The Delphis, we're talking also about the chronograph balance, which had 2 retrograde complications, one for the second, one for the date. And it was just about the question of time when we would reintroduce a new retrograde. And this time we said it would be making sense to have it on the open gear at 6 o'clock. So we have a 30 seconds retrograde.
Yeah, and being a modern mechanical watch brand, what does that mean to you?
Well, modern mechanical, for me, it's the best of 2 worlds. It's about the past and the future. It's about combining old materials, old handicrafts, and combining them with new materials, new techniques, new machinery. It's about this combination of old and new. When you look at the Guilloche, for example, what we're going to be talking about today, we do the Guilloche, an old handicraft. We produce them on 100-year-old machines, giving you incredible shininess and quality. And then at the same time, you're looking at new color schemes, and sometimes not everything can be done galvanizing as in the old times. So here we came up with a new coating, CVD coating, which is state of the art. So in talking about the Guilloche, I think it's a good example of how we combine old and new.
Yeah, and let's have a look at the watch. You have another camera prepared for the watch. And why is it called Big Wave? You can show us on the watch.
Well, also here it's a combination of the color and the pattern of the Guilloche. For those who know me, I love the sea, ocean, sailing, everything what has to do with water. So that's why in the past we used a lot of blue color, which is a strong color for us. So one side, it's the name, blue, that's why Big Wave. And then at the same time, it's the question of the pattern of the watch. And I'm trying to put this as good as possible into the camera.
And you see this very long, slow wave.
Yes, you can see these very long waves. And you need to understand when we do a new dial, it's all about the balance of the face of the watch, of the dial. So not every pattern of Guilloche works for every watch. Mm-hmm. So here also we did a lot of different Guilloches until we ended up with this one, and we said, why don't we go to the extreme? And for those who know how the Guilloche works, the patterns are done based on the amplitude and based on the period of the Guilloche machine, the way how you program it. And here we used the minimized amplitude, and we went for the maximizing in the period. So this gives you this very long wave, and that's why we came up and called it Big Wave.
Yeah, and it also creates this amazing, to me, this trompe-l'œil effect where the waves almost seem to be jumping out of the dial, and also an important detail in this context is that it's doing all these optical effects without disturbing the actual time reading, which is at the end of the day quite important for a watch, that you can read the time at all times.
Absolutely. In the end, it's still an instrument, and you need to be able to read it properly. So the rallies.
And why is it such a big challenge to do these long, big waves?
Well, when you look at the watch again, and maybe you can imagine, it's a very long wave, and any little difference in pushing the Guilloche machine or the cutting instrument, it would reflect in a different cut, in a different deepness, different valleys that you would be created. So the longer the wave, the longer the period, and the smaller the amplitudes, the more difficult is it to cut such a Guilloche.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful pattern. And with the handmade Guilloche, which you have really been a strong advocate for, why the fascination for handmade Guilloche?
Well, first of all, for me, I think in today's world where everything is mass, it's about the uniqueness of having something particular. Every dial is different in some ways. So I think owning something which is really done for you, and it's only once in the world, it makes it a nice story. Also, knowing who had done the Guilloche, or knowing the watchmakers behind it, also gives you a different story to the whole watch. And I think this is in particularly one of the points which makes this kind of handicraft, this art, important to me and nice.
Yeah, and we just had a comment coming from Michel Fouth, who is saying großartiges Design und Arbeit, Mike. That's great work to Mike Pansiera, our designer and also our Guilloche master. So Mike Pansiera is really meaning a lot for the new look of Chronoswiss watches.
I take this compliment and I will forward it to Mike.
Yeah. And, what other key design points would you say make a Chronoswiss watch instantly recognizable, including the hybrid dial?
Well, in particular the elements that we're always using, our DNA, when we want to go and look at the watch again, it's the onion crown. Most people know us for this. It's the lux that are in existence since ever.
And with those details is also interesting because they've gone through a small evolution. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Even though the DNA and the history is very important to us, I think every watch goes to an evolution, and we say evolution, not revolution. So when you look at the crown, it has become smaller in size over the years, fitting it in a more balanced way to the watch and to the case. Similarly here with the lux a couple of years back has been very long. Now we have shortened them to make it easier to wear, better in reflection and balance to the overall case. These are the elements most people know when they look at the Chronoswiss.
Yeah, and also with the new Chronoswiss, the hybrid dial is very important, which is also correlating with the question we just got from Lino Miguel de Sousa. What changes have been made in the caliber?
Well, in the caliber, we still work with the C301 here. We have if you look at the caliber here, when you look at the hybrid constellation, we have a base movement that is often ETA-based, but redesigned and refinished by us. And then reworked. And then we have the complication, which is a Chronoswiss complication. So the whole regulator complication is designed, prototyped, and done in-house. And when you talked about the hybrid mechanism or hybrid dial, I hope you can see it, but yes, I think you can. You see that the dial consists also of bridges and holding the wheels below from the movement. So the dial in our case is not only a dial, it is part of the overall movement. We called it open gear in order for you to see how the regulator works below. So the wheels below show you the mechanism of the regulator.
And speaking about the regulator, it has been part of the heritage since 1988 when you pioneered the regulators, the first brand to serially produce it in wristwatches. Again, why the fascination with regulators?
Well, regulator is part of our history. It goes back a couple of hundred years in watchmaking, where the first regulators were wall clocks. They were used for very precise time giving for train stations or for different industries. There were wall clocks, as I said, and the regulator is the decentralized hour, decentralized second, and the minute from the very center of the watch. And we have been the first one who actually took the regulator onto a wristwatch and did series of watches based on the regulator dial. So today, many of our watches have this regulator character and the base, and then we make different calibers on top of the regulator.
Yeah, and another question that also came in from Mr. De Sousa was the size, and that is correct. It is 44 millimeters. And here is another really interesting from Giuseppe Turri. Why did we choose an interval of 30 seconds for the retrograde function? It stresses the movement, he thinks. And he is an owner of a Delphis, which he had some problems with, but why the 30 seconds?
Well, I was fascinated with the chronograph balance that we did, and we also had a 30 seconds retrograde. So, and then at the same time, you need to look at the balance of the watch. Making it too short might be too nervous. So we just came up with this. There were discussions going back and forward, but we ended up with the 30 seconds. And just talking about the stresses of the movements, so far we had good experience with the chronograph balance, which so far we never had any issues on the retrograde part.
Yeah, and also the 30 seconds, being a coffee lover, it's also the time to make a perfect espresso, no? You should leave the coffee machine for 30 seconds, so it's...
Absolutely, Anders, absolutely.
Tool in the morning. And the Chronoswiss is a small, independent, family-owned company. What are the advantages of that? And actually, what are you doing at the atelier in Lucerne?
Well, we do a lot of things in-house, from designing, Mike was mentioned before, to prototyping. We do the Guilloche in-house, so everything what concerns the dials, we very much emphasize our know-how on the dials. So Guilloche, enameling, etc. We have small ateliers here in Lucerne where we do this all in-house. But then at the same time, in the back you see here is our watchmakers. We do the assembly, we do the quality testing, we do the after-sales service. So yes, it's a small company with a lot of know-how, and everything that we take in-house to keep the know-how here.
Yeah, and we also have a question from Mr. Holmes. How many pieces will we produce of this?
We produce around 2,000 plus pieces, roughly.
And from the big wave, from this model in particular?
From the big wave, we just do about 50 pieces.
Yeah.
I've been asked this before, but just because of the size and because of the many hundreds idea all the team has here, we always do small series, limited series, and then we go to the next watch. But in general, it's between 30 to 50 pieces that we do per watch model.
And another question just came in from Mr. Meyer, whether it's possible to visit the atelier.
Oh, love to have everybody here who's interested. As a family business, we like to have this interaction, and we actually opened up our atelier in 2014 for everybody who walks by to step in without any out making any schedule. It's open to visit. All of our team are happy to show around and communicate what we're doing. So yes, pleasure having you here.
Yeah, and again, it's really great to see that the people are very active. And it's also about older models. One question is if we will have specialist watches from the past, such as the Digiteur or the Time Master. Mr. Stolk in the Netherlands are asking about any chance of reviving models like that?
Absolutely. I mean, you asked me about the family aspect, and I think for us it's important that we can keep a red line in our products. And we have a long-term view. So it's not about producing watches that fits every person around the globe. It's about continue with our heritage and preserve it. So yes, we have a lot of ideas in mind to revive some older models as well. Delphis is a good example. I think it's a strong model. Definitely there will be some time when we will have a look at this. Yes.
Yeah, and and will there be also other materials for the houses now? Or for the housing of the watch, like in precious metals.
Yes, we test. We are currently testing a couple of different materials, but it's too early to say with what we go. In the end, we very much like the classic materials, because it's easier for some classic materials to rework them after sales service. But we're testing currently a couple of new materials, and hopefully by mid-year, end of the year, we see if we have something new in our hands.
Yeah. And what particular advantages, disadvantages would you say come out of being in Lucerne? Mr. Sharma is asking. And he also notices a lot of nods to C in our design elements. Is it maybe because of the proximity of Vierwaldstätte See around the corner from the atelier?
I didn't got the last question. A lot of notes to see?
A lot of nods, a lot of references to the sea.
Aha. Well, we have the lake of the forest just in front of us. So yes, I spend a lot of time there. So that's probably why we have a lot of blue inside and elements from the sea. But there's no disadvantage. Being in Lucerne, I think we're living here, so that's our home turf. Don't forget that Lucerne used to have a lot of very famous watchmakers, starting with Mr. Spöring, who did the Türler watch, etc. There's quite a good community of watchmakers here in Lucerne. That's an important point, I think, for us at least.
Yeah. And the question that often pops up is also, what is the old Chronoswiss, the heritage design elements that survived, and what is new? Maybe you could show that on the watch.
Of course. As I mentioned before, I think it's the crown, it's the lugs, which are the really old heritage parts, which we kept. We evolutionized them a little bit. But then the new parts is in particular the three-dimensional structure of the dial. I think this is, we came up with this about 4 years ago, where we said we need some more depth in the dial. I personally like when there's depth in the dial, when you can look into it. We emphasize, as I mentioned before, a lot on the quality and the finishing of the dial. So you see these different structures. It's always a play what we're trying to do. So the guilloche, and then you have at the same time the mirror polished screws over here. Then at the same time, new are these supernovae nova accents on the blocks here. So you can read it also during the night. So it's a combination basically of many things. But looking at the watch from far, let's say, because this was the question, I think, you can always recognize it because of the regulator type, because of the crown, because of the casing. And I hear a lot of people saying because of the finishing of the overall watch. So when you look here also, if there's a blue dial, there must be a blue rotor in order to have this balance. So there's a lot of little tiny things which for us they make the world, you know. So concentrating on the little things sometimes make the difference for us.
Yeah. And then we have 2 more questions related to the past. And one is, any chance of reviving the Sauterelle movement, and also that Chronoswiss has a very strong heritage of chronographs. Are there any new chronographs in the making?
Well, I had to laugh because of the Sauterelle. It has been a very, very important part of our history because, but it's still an ongoing watch that we want to do at some stage. So it's just about a couple of weeks back we talked about this. It's in the doing. I don't know if it's in 2 or 3 years. It needs to be well thought about. Yeah. And on the chronograph side, yes, we have been very strong in chronograph, and the idea is latest next year to come up with a new model on that.
Yeah, and to no surprise, it's one of our very faithful collectors in Portugal, Miguel Zebra, asking about the chronographs.
Hi, Miguel.
Yeah, and is it possible to customize this watch? Mr. Holmes is asking, and he even has a design proposal here that he's thinking of like a desert beige color because the pattern reminds him of sand dunes.
Well, this sounds fantastic. That's an idea we have to take up. Yes, our watches can be customized. I think that's also the positive thing about being a small family company. we do a lot of ideas are coming actually from customers or partners, and then we think about it in our team here, and a couple of watches are based on customers' ideas. And when I hear now the Namibian desert and having these pattern looking as dunes and having the right sand coloring, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
great idea. So
the name is Sosufley, after the world's largest sand dune.
So we have the name as well.
And we have another question from Mr. Sharma. Would you say that the regulator is the foremost specialty of Chronoswiss, historically and present?
Yes, it's our base. Especially, it's our heritage. So we will always produce a lot of regulators, because I personally like the regulator, and I also think when reading the watch, once you know how, it's a very easy reading. So there's also a technical part to it which I love. So yes, we could call it this.
Yeah, but still not forgetting about the chronographs, as
it was mentioned before. Yes.
Yeah, and had a new comment on that. A new chronograph would definitely pay homage to the founder of Chronoswiss, from Mr. Stork in the Netherlands.
Absolutely. Nope. It's in the doing.
In the doing. And how would you describe a Chronoswiss collector? Is it possible?
Yes and no. I'm being asked this a couple of times also from journalists, but it's not like in earlier days where you could put a person into a matrix, you know. Today, I would say the closest we can get is calling our Chronoswiss collector, our Chronoswiss watch friend, a non-conformist person. He looks for something different, and I think when you look at our watches today, now speaking about the big wave open gear, I think it's different than what you find in the market. So it's a niche product, and the person wants the story to it. So we have a lot of direct clients who are very close to us, and they love to know where the watch comes from, who did it, what's the story behind it, the name, as you asked before. Yeah. So non-conformist, maybe.
Yeah. So most of them designed by Mike and assembled by Karin.
You know the whole team.
And also what I gather from the conversations that I'm having on social media with collectors who very often have more than one piece is also this idea that a Chronoswiss you get because you love it. It's not trying to show off to others.
Well, I think yes, one could state this as well. I think we're a niche brand. I mean, we don't have to call us differently. So we do small amount of watches, and people really think about the watch. They want to know everything about the watch. They want to know the things about the handicrafts, etc. So they really are into watches, and I think it's, as I mentioned before, it's the story, which is also part of it. A part of the family service and the family closeness in terms of service, etc. Yes.
Yeah. And from Mr. Khalaf, just a nice shout out that he loves the crown and the race style. And then from Mr. I hope I pronounced this correctly, Treshonkovsky is asking if we're going to offer some power reserve functions on coming models.
The last power reserve function was on a Sirius and on the Time Master. We have worked well with this module, with these complications. So that's also one of the functions I like a lot, because it really helps you when you have an automatic watch. Yeah. In terms of widening when it's So yes, also in the doing, although this might not be in the next 2 years, rather later.
Yeah. And another question is coming in that we seem to have changed in many ways. If you look at the origin of the brand almost 40 years ago, why?
Well, I wouldn't say we have changed. We have adapted to a new surrounding. And I think you cannot keep with what you have been doing 40 years ago. The environment is changing. But I think it's important, and that also goes back to the question before. We're trying to keep our heritage, to preserve this. So a lot of aspects on the design type are still Chronoswiss as it was used 40 years ago. But then at the same time, this three-dimensional dial with the Guilloche is something new, but not putting in jeopardy what we used to do some 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line, and it's not always easy, but it's key to have this red line throughout the collection and throughout time. And we put a lot of emphasis on exactly doing this and trying not to, as I said before, creating a watch for everybody.
No, and I think also to remain relevant, you have to have an evolution. In my personal opinion, I think there are a little bit, perhaps too much historical flirting going on in the industry, which also makes a lot of pieces looking very much the same. But with the Chronoswiss, as you said before, they're instantly recognizable. And we have another question coming in regarding possibilities to personalize the watch.
Yes, we can personalize the watch, and we do it from time to time, and this goes from A to Z. So some people come in and say, well, I bought this jewelry for my wife or whatever, and I need a watch with a pink dial. So we just had this lately, so we made a pink Guilloche dial. We had a gentleman who bought a nice car, and he wanted exactly the watch. It was a Opus chronograph in exactly the same color as his car. So we had to go back and forward over many weeks to really reach the same color in the Guilloche. So everything is possible.
Yeah. And Mr. Sharma again is also talking about the fraternity that you get among Chronoswiss collectors if you do meet somebody somewhere in the world. It's rather rare, but given the small series, but when you do, you instantly have something in common to talk about. And another very specific question, which I could not answer, but maybe you can. Has the Chronoswiss logo with the engulfed R inside the letter C always been like that? Or if not, when did you start with that?
It's always been like this.
Okay.
No change to this.
Yeah. And regarding the limited series, is it possible to choose a number?
Yes, it is.
But
not so much for the liking. Sorry, say again.
You know, if the number is still available, if not, it's gone. You know.
No, I think that's what makes a difference. You know, sometimes it's about having the right number because it's your beloved watch, and you have a story to the number as well. So wherever it's possible, we try to help the customer to get his right number. But often that's also a bit jeopardy. Yeah.
And again, Mr. Zebra is also pointing out the fact that we have been paying tribute to the past with the updates of the lunar chronograph and the Opus chronograph, which has also recently come out in new colors and new iterations.
Yeah, I mean, to the question of before, this is a good example of watches that we have in the collection for almost 20 years. So these are watches having been in the collection for 20 years, and we only changed slightly on the color, for example. So I think you need some updates from here and there. And these are very small updates, but they have their effect. So that's a good example, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's quite the big update, like with the recent Tourbillon as well. It was quite a dramatic design evolution from the original.
Absolutely. But you also see similarities from the past to today. But when you look at these two watches, it's like, it's the 25 years in between. So it's a colored guilloche. We work again with a very special coating, state of the art from today. It's a different movement. It's a bigger wheel. So it's adapting, and in the end, we go over these designs hours and hours, and that's the work of our whole team.
Yeah. And we have another question in from Quarters Eye who is asking how many of the artist collection watches are made every year, and would it be possible to have an artist watch with the in-house C122 caliber?
Here again, we have a lot of requests for a special caliber, for a special dial, for a bespoke watch, basically. So many things are possible. It's always a question to sit together first, draft a little sketch, and see what's the idea, and then we start going into the details. What calibers we have available. Also, when you talk about colors, not everything is doable because of the handicraft. But we make it possible whenever there's a way forward.
Yeah, and with all these kind of requests, and you could always do it through the website and through the social media channels, and Beat Weinmann and head of sales Massimiliano Grotto will take care of all your requests. And there's another question from the Eclecticum, who is asking, that we are now associated with the null bezel front and back, but in the past we also experimented with smooth bezels. And what are our experiences here?
The bezel is also part of the Chronoswiss DNA, and yes, we tried out non-fluted bezel. And we had a lot of talks with our partners, customers, direct clients, etc. And it ended up that the bezel is part of it all. But we minimized the structure to some extent here again to make it more in balance with the overall watch. So we experimented, and we came to the end that it's not working for us. So sometimes you do experiments also to find out.
Yeah.
To be honest. So this was an experiment, yes.
Yeah. And we have a question from Leslie Lopez of the Tiempo de Relojes magazine in Mexico, who's asking how many releases we will see this year. And this is also then correlating with what is happening in April.
This year for April, first of all, we have been invited to join Watches and Wonders, the first digital exhibition for us, I think for many brands. So we're very excited to show everything at Watches and Wonders. We're going to be having around 8 novelties that we're showing in April. And I have been asked if people can join in for the Watches and Wonders. As far as I know, by today it is possible, so just send us an email, etc., so we can probably have you as a guest and do a special session on the new watches that are coming up in the beginning of April.
And from Mr. Sharma is asking about the Skeltec collection, which he calls the most modern and daring of our different collections. And what place do you see for this in the future? Will it be expanded?
Yes, we are coming up with a different color also now in April. It was a strong model last year. It was done together with some people from the blockchain Bitcoin industry. They came up to me and said, "We love your watches, we love the philosophy, everything, but there's some ideas." And it was a long process, over a year and a half, that we came up with different lux, keeping the existing lux but making them lighter in terms to see through them. And it's taking the skeletonizing to the next level when you compare it to the old Opus and the new Skeltec. you see some parallels, you see some history, but it's a big step for us, and it will definitely stay in the collection. We had very good feedback so far.
And could you see even automatic models coming in the Skeltec collection? Mr. De Souza is asking.
Not for the time, because it's always a big process if you come up with something completely new, new movement, new complication, new skeletonizing. So it will definitely stay for some years before we think about a new movement, an automatic movement. Not for now.
Yeah. And then from Trishankovsky again, he is talking about the fact that we also have certified pre-owned watches on the website. And will we develop this secondary market to encourage the exchange of watches?
Yes, we just started end of, September last year, I think. And it's an interesting market because we do exchanges. We have a lot of people looking for older watches. Some watches you cannot find, or some watches you might find, but people want to have it from the producer just because of quality and guarantee reasons. So it's a very interesting platform for us, and we definitely keep it. And we're going to evolve on this as well to some extent. But it's new to us, but interesting.
Yeah. And I would suggest that we get a final look on the watch again. And maybe there is something that we haven't said about the watch yet that you would like to add before we thank everybody for tuning in.
Well, you have been part of the process as well. So how do you like it? I never asked you.
Well, I really like it, as you know, and also the small details like the trigono-shaped minute hands, which makes the reading really, really easy. And I, as a design nerd, I also love the fact that it's a design unique to Chronoswiss. And also, again, with this little details that the sensitivity of the mirror-polished screws need special screwdrivers, in this case, made of soft plexiglass. Plexiglass. And these kind of details, I think, is really, really nice. And then also being of a not very large build myself and with small wrists, it's very seldom that I comfortably wear 44mm watches, but I've had this on now for a couple of weeks, or a similar model. And it wears really well.
Yeah, I think the importance for me is the finishing, where we put a lot of emphasis on it. Is it the color? Is it the polishing? Is it the satin finish on the side? As it was mentioned before. Let me see that I can focus in. Not sure.
Something.
Anyway, I think it's the overall combination of all these different elements, as you were mentioning, Anders.
Yeah, and Mr. Sharma is saying that quite correctly that the number of independent historical Swiss watchmakers is on a decrease or acquired by big conglomerations. How important is independence to Chronoswiss?
Well, it's we have been independent for so many years. Independence gives you freedom. Not always easy in today's world being independent, but there's a lot of ateliers also being independent. So it's about choosing the right partners, and I think this independence gives also the interest in the overall industry of watchmaking. Having a lot of independence gives a lot of ideas. It gives some spice to the whole watchmaking industry, I think. So for us, very important being independent.
Yes, and I think that's a great note to finish on. And I would like to thank everybody who's tuned in from around the world.
Yes, I mean, it's. I'm very touched to see how many people joined in, and I see here on the side all the different questions popping up, and knowing the one or the other collector or partner quite well. So thank you for joining in. That's.
Would you like to answer the last that just popped in the last minute?
Here to answer anytime.
Yeah. So, for instance, the last question we got, if there was any small models like 38 millimeters for ladies planned?
We've been asked about ladies models, and we'll come up with this. There's a request, and I think it's correct to have this line taken up. But for now, for the new models coming up, we do not have them.
Yeah. And then it's also an ongoing trend with extending warranty. What does that mean? We
have in general 2 years warranty, and so you have the possibility in signing up for a third year. So 3 years in total.
All right. Perfect. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we could answer. If there's something that we've missed, don't hesitate to send it via the social media channels or via email. And yeah, thank you again for tuning in from around the world.
Yes, thank you a lot.
And this is available as of now. And you will also find more tech specs on our website.
Correct, as for now.
Yes.
Thank you, Anders. Thank you, everybody. And wherever you are, all the best from Lucerne. Take care.
Take care. Ciao.
Ciao.